join in. And in the meantime, write in the chat where you're calling in from, and we like to see where people are in the world, and we'll kick off in 1 second. I'm so excited to be here. NYC, a lot of NYC. Philly, hi. Chicago. Okay. New York City. All right. DC. I went to school in DC. Chicago, North. Oh, we got Montana, Ohio. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is amazing. I will go ahead and get started. I'm Lily. I'm the founder and CEO of Auggie, and I'm so thrilled to be here with you today, surrounded by an incredible group of women. A lot of you on this call have been there for me with some camaraderie and some commisery, so thank you so much for that support. We're all building businesses while also, I was going to say building babies, which I guess in some ways makes sense. Parenting is chaotic. Running a business is chaotic. Doing both simultaneously, it's not for the faint of heart. Some days we're crushing it. Other days we're proud to just have everyone fed and dressed, even if that means they're in pajamas. But here is one thing that no one tells you. There is no manual for this, no roadmap for raising a baby while raising capital and building a business, no training wheels for leading a team while leaking through your shirt on a Zoom call, or in my experience, throwing up in between pitch meetings. Today is about pulling back the curtain. We're here to talk about the unfiltered truth, the highs, the heartbreaks, the hacks, the humor of being a founder and a parent, because when we share our stories honestly, we make it easier for the next parent who's navigating this impossible juggle. So whether you're joining with a baby on your hip, in your belly, or just, out of sight with the nanny, like mine is on a play date in my house currently, we are excited to have you. So I'm going to kick it off by letting everybody introduce themselves. And Sarah, just because you're first on my screen, start with you. Tell us who you are, your business, and how many kids you have, please.
All right. Hi, I'm Sarah Moskoff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Winnie, which is a childcare and education marketplace. Check it out at winnie.com. I have 3 kids who are, oh gosh, am I going to get this right? One just turned 5. That's my little guy. And then I have one that's almost 7 and almost 10.
Sweet. And Sophia, you're next, and you're expecting just like me, so you'll probably be winded if I have to guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Sophia Laurel. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Tiny Organics. We're a child nutrition company really on the mission to shape the palates of children to learn to love vegetables from the very beginning. And I've been on this journey for a while. I'll talk more about my background in Finland and why I started the company. But yes, I'm about 32 weeks pregnant. So really excited. I think it's going to give me deeper meaning for the company as well. But thanks for having me.
Definitely, we're excited to have you. And Elaine, you're next.
Sure. Elaine Purcell, I'm co-founder of ULA. We are a maternity company headquartered in New York City. Although we just announced our next market, we are moving to Connecticut. We are looking at maternity care with a new lens, combining midwifery and obstetric to create the best patient experience. We have about 2,500 babies we've delivered so far, which is an awesome milestone to meet. And very shortly, we will be delivering Lily's.
Yep.
Which is amazing. I have 2 ULA babies of my own. My first son is 4. He was our first delivery. And then my second, who is named Auggie, ironically, is almost 2.
So sweet. Yeah, I'm so excited. And if anybody is expecting and in New York or Connecticut, definitely check out ULA. It's what happens when you combine, in my experience, like a hospital with hospitality, and I'm loving it. Jess, you are next.
Hi, yes. Nice to meet all of you. I'm Jess Jacobs. I'm the CEO of Coterie. We're a premium baby care brand engineering thoughtful diapering solutions. We're on a mission to make parents' lives easier with high quality, high performance, safe, clean, changing essentials. I have 2 kids. One is 4.5. So if anyone else had like a true COVID baby, I can relate to you there. And then I have a 1.5-year-old. So I'm still in it, as they say, and I feel it for sure. And yeah,
You're getting a call out in the chat that Coterie diapers and wipes are so luxurious, and I 100% agree. And one thing I will say is everyone feel free to use the chat. I'll be moderating it. If there are questions that aren't getting answered that you want to know, feel free to type them in and I'll do my best to get the crowd to answer them. All right, Ariane, you're next.
Hi, gang. Ariane Goldman. I'm the founder and now the Chief Creative Officer of Hatch. I founded Hatch when I was pregnant with my first daughter, really looking for a brand to speak to me in terms of a new world and category that I was entering. I started off with 12 key pieces from a clothing standpoint that I thought women would need just to get through their life that they could wear under the premise before, during, and after pregnancy, so things weren't disposable, and really look at ourselves and our fashion differently so we can feel good about ourselves and invest in the moment. And then over the years, as we gained trust with customers, it was really about cobbling together what else could, now that we had the trust of these beautiful moms to be, what else could we provide? And so we got into non-toxic skincare. Our belly oil is one of our hero products. And then from there, we went into education and community, and really helping and reaching out by informing women what's about to happen and as they embark on this next chapter, using our stores as a meeting place, and then later creating Babe, our content website where we surface the digital community. And it's just been a beautiful journey, a real labor of love. I've used that one before, as you can imagine. And not to date myself, but I have two daughters. One is 10 and one is 14. So I'm no longer in it, but I'm in something totally different that when you're ready, guys, you can come to me for advice because it's a whole new chapter.
I need to know if it gets easier.
It doesn't. It's very different.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, the mental load. What does doing it all really look like? I'm not even sure I believe in doing it all, quote unquote, but let's start with the invisible stuff, the cognitive load, the constant juggling, emotional labor. I guess the question I have for all of you is how do you stay afloat when your brain is split between board meetings and then the baby milestones? And Sarah, maybe we'll kick it off with you just because specifically I'm so interested how you navigate like the paradox of being both a parent and a childcare founder and like living through the systematic gaps in this country.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like I sort of just exited the sort of like baby toddler years, and as far as the mental load, it's sort of at a whole new level now with three kids in activities and braces and various tutoring and therapies and it's kind of, I thought it was a lot of mental load before, but it's really been taken to the next level. But I feel like I developed some of the tools and systems in the early years to manage it now. I definitely am not winning at everything, but one of my big tips is just like I write everything down. I don't trust my brain anymore to remember things. If it's an appointment or something that has to happen or someone's homework is due, it's in my calendar. And if it's not there, it's almost definitely not going to happen. And that has definitely helped, not relying on my brain to remember everything. But I mean, just to kind of talk my own book, another big thing I've learned over the years, over the decade of parenting that I've done, is like childcare is great. I think I was ironically incredibly reluctant to put my kids in like tons of hours of childcare initially. I wanted to both save money and try to get by with less as I was a scrappy founder, but I also was like, I need to spend time with them and do it all myself. And now, you know, my preschooler, like he's there from 7:45 a.m. to 5 p.m. or later. They let you pick up at 6, and like he's happy and he's thriving, and like, you know, he might be better adjusted than my other two who had more of me. And I've just really found that like the more time I can give myself, it really is an investment in, you know, making sure I can get everything done and manage it all. And like childcare, yes, it is an investment and it costs money, but it's not a bad thing. It might actually be better for them and definitely better for me.
Definitely. I love that. And I guess Jess, I'll go over to you now. Like when does one let go and what's your philosophy there?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. It's something I grapple with every day. I have a few Post-its here on my computer I'm staring at. One says say less, one says do less. I feel like that's part of it. It's, you know, you can't do it all, so don't, and let go of that need to, I think is huge. So it's pulling back on the things that are not necessary and really letting them go. My mom has a saying, let go or be dragged. So it's like letting that go and embracing that. And I have two kids, but mentally I pretend like I have three because I like to think of myself as the
Child.
self. We're getting a little esoteric. The self is like one of my kids, and I have to schedule things for myself as well, just like them. Like I need to get my nails done. I need to, do things that are for me, and be able to carve out that time. Or it's like it's the airplane mask. I'm not going to be able to get my oxygen to be able to show up in the best way for my family, the business, all those things. So I try to squeeze myself in as much as possible and don't feel any type of guilt about that either.
Great. And someone's saying your nails look great from here. So you're doing something. I, on the other hand, that is not the case. So I'm going to take a note out of your playbook and like book that into my
I'm
calendar.
investing in face and hands, the rest, whatever. Like
Yeah.
those are the trade-offs. Those are the trade-offs.
Yeah. Elaine, I am a patient of Ula and I see firsthand how much you prioritize not only the pregnancy, but the expecting parent. So when it comes to you at home, how do you prioritize yourself while also juggling the mental load?
Not easy. I guess there's like two things I think of, which is perfection is the enemy of good, which is echoing a lot of what others have said, is just let go. You're never going to be perfect, and what's good enough is probably amazing for your children.
Yeah.
And the second thing I think about is what I really try to do is focus on what I'm doing at that moment. I also saw someone in the chat, I'm also ADHD, and so it's
You
easy
too?
for me to say I'm going to be with my child, do a couple of emails, pick up a phone call, and start cooking dinner. That's actually where you're not delivering what you need to your child, and you're also not able to actually deliver what you need to do for work. And so, setting rules and boundaries around myself and my husband about from 6 to 8 every night, we put our phones away. And making sure that we're really focused on childcare, because the most stressful thing is when you can't give your all to either your child or your business.
Yeah, I love that phone trick. I need to do that at home, especially. I'm going to enforce it with my husband. Sophia, you're expecting, as am I, with my first business, and I don't recommend this, but it was my reality. I was back to work after a C-section 10 days later. It was horrible and definitely contributed to some of the postpartum depression that I had in some ways. And I'm just curious how you're prioritizing yourself and setting yourself up for leave, because selfishly, I'm struggling with what that means for me come end of July.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's an interesting dynamic too, because I've been in the baby space for a number of years with the company. So now expecting my first, it's it's an interesting experience for sure. And I think what I've learned also, like pregnancy is such an individual experience. I have a couple of complications like gestational diabetes and placenta previa. And even in the very beginning, you're kind of anxious about, is it going to be a viable pregnancy? Then you're anxious about, like, you spend hours on, I'm sure, Reddit and other platforms like I have. You go deep into the different rabbit holes. But I think, for me, it's interesting because I have an amazing co-founder, and I've been, just chatting with her. I'm like, I don't even know how to like not look at my email for like a week and a half, because it gives me anxiety, because I'm like, I know it's going to be, there's going to be so many unread emails. And I think for her and I, what we've decided is maybe just have like in the very beginning, just kind of a weekly check-in. I'm sure I'm going to text her more than that, but just kind of really give me time to enjoy. And, and I know also I've heard how hard the first kind of 6 to 8 weeks can be. My mom is actually flying in from Finland to help me, and she's a retired Montessori teacher. So not only am I so excited to see her, but I feel like I'll be in good hands. But it's definitely, I think there's a lot of anxiety that's not discussed enough, maybe. And then definitely combining you know, your day-to-day workload with having a baby. The one thing is also different if, like, say if you're like a doctor or a lawyer versus a founder. I think that's also, that dynamic is quite different. My son is, by the way, kicking, so I think he's enjoying this conversation.
Yeah, so is mine.
Yeah, there you go. I think I saw that video, like when mom to be laughs and then like what happens in the womb. But yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also anxious, definitely. And we all know, like in the US, you know, maternity leaves could be longer. And like to your point, I'm going to have a C-section as well. So, you know, there's recovery time. It's a
Oh,
major
I have
surgery.
a whole gift basket I'm gonna send you.
Oh, amazing. Thank you.
Ariane, what was your leave like? Because I know it was early days of Hatch. No leave.
There was no leave. There was no leave. I literally, I mean, I'd like to set an example, and I think in today's world, I might set that example, but truth be told, I think you've all kind of covered it. As a founder, you know, Hatch was my first baby. And so the excitement, the inspiration, like the blood running through my veins as the milk was running out of my boob, like into my daughter's mouth, like they were both equally as adrenaline filling. And so she would come, I would bring her to the office with me. I was fortunate enough to have some help along the side, but I worked from home, and as a founder and the obsession, it's funny. After I had her, I looked in her eyes, and the inspiration of figuring this out and making it happen actually just kind of, you know, it just blew up. And so I did both simultaneously, and I have a couple of regrets, but I don't really. I think we do the best we can. And Jess and Sarah, you said, like, just forgive yourself. There is no playbook. And so allowing yourself to feel comfortable and giving yourself the space. One thing I've done as they've gotten older is I've actually calendarized on my calendar with my assistant pickup times from school that the entire team can see, so that it's kosher and it's actually accepted, and I'm not making any excuses for being a mom. And I'm equally kind of prioritizing that with a meeting with investors and or, you know, a sales meeting. And I think that that's an awesome opportunity to own motherhood publicly and say this is an equal priority for me as well.
I love that. And I think, like, if anyone's on this call and thinking about the entrepreneurial journey, one thing that I will say is, like, okay, leave may look different, but flexibility shows up in different ways when you're an entrepreneur, and you have that freedom to really carve out the time that you want, hopefully, on your calendar. So I love making that public. Jess, I know you're not the founder of Coterie, but now as the leader of Coterie, how do you set that standard for people that you manage below you?
That's one of the things I'm so proud of the products that we engineer, being high performing and safe and clean. I'm perhaps equally as proud as the culture we've created here, because I think you have to walk the talk. And I've been in experiences where it hasn't always been that way, and it hurts, and it doesn't make anyone feel more motivated. We're a team of many parents, which I think is our superpower, actually. We don't have an office. We're all work from home across the country, different time zones. We're all adults. There's a high level of trust and collaboration and openness, and everybody gets it done. And it's a wonderful way to sort of live out like what we believe should be happening everywhere. And, you know, you have to just start small and with you. And, but I am so proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like, you know, my mom, similarly to, I like quoting her the way that you did, and she's always like, I'll trust you until you give me a reason not to. I mean, not now in my adult years, but growing up. That's now what I've started to say to my colleagues. Like, I'm hiring you for a reason. If I can't trust you, then we have a bigger issue. And so there's flexibility here at Auggie, but you have to get your work done.
Yep.
Sarah, 3 kids, a business. I mean, to me, that sounds like an absolute inspiration. So, if I've had to guess, you've been sleep deprived over the years and also having to show up at work. What are some of the worst decisions you've made while running on fumes?
Oh God. So many bad decisions while running on fumes.
So
I
many
mean,
bad decisions, period, in my book. And then add the
I
food.
mean, usually for me, it shows up in like, I get frustrated with either my team or my children like sooner than I should. And my coping mechanism is like, well, one, if I can take a nap, that will like fix things. I try to nap. I'm a big napper, even just in the middle of the day. I will like if I have a break between meetings, I will like instantly fall asleep and wake up. I'm very good at that. Or I try to exercise. Like those are the two things that for me like help. And I think I've gotten better about realizing when I'm entering that zone, which included today when I was getting very angry with a team member for a customer churning. And I'm like, you know what? I gotta chill. I will do to have a go for a run maybe after this and like then reflect back on like how I want to deal with the situation. But I can usually sense when I'm starting to get very frustrated with folks.
Yeah. And Elaine, what about you? Because I know Augie is on the younger side, so you must more than some.
It's funny. I definitely, I'm also a very good napper. Like during my pregnancy and postpartum, because I also went back to work a little too early. I
What's early?
uh, 3 to 4 weeks, in the traditional sense. But again, I'm happy to talk about the complexity surrounding and then kind of how do you go back to work early if you own your own business, while
Yes.
also making sure you're taking care of yourself and others. I would say similarly, so definitely a coping mechanism was trying to take that 45-minute nap at 4 o'clock, and not feeling guilty about it, in order to be a better person for my family, my husband, my team. But yeah, there are plenty of mistakes made. I think definitely a lot of hiring mistakes. So
Yep.
there's always a feeling of like urgency especially when you're really tired, and then mix that with building a business of like, I have to make this decision today and now. And in reality, you don't. And kind of forcing yourself to just slow down in a moment when the world seems really chaotic because you've got young kids, you haven't gotten sleep, and realizing that you can take that extra day to make that decision.
Yeah. That I respect everything that you're saying, and I have also made those mistakes. Sophia, being pregnant, I mean, listen, I'm right there with you, but I have the second trimester blissful stage right now. You're a little bit ahead of me. How are you?
Yeah, great question. I was saying that I feel fortunate that it's been pretty smooth. I think the gestational diabetes was a surprise actually that I got diagnosed really early. That's probably been the biggest, I think has had the biggest impact on my pregnancy. I mean, the silver lining is you end up eating way healthier than you would normally. But I think it's just even just from a broader human being perspective, like I think it's just fascinating that we're growing little humans in our stomachs or in our bellies. And, there's that image that shows like how much your organs are moving. And I've just been kind of thinking more broadly about all of this and how really magical it is. And then also what's been on my mind is, and this is so helpful. All I do, I feel like every day is ask for people's experiences. Because again, it's such an individual experience for everybody. But what's on my mind is definitely kind of sleep, feeding. Tiny Organics comes into play around 6 months and up, but I think kind of the breastfeeding formula, everything that comes with it. And I just had my baby shower on Saturday, so Hatch and Cottery and all the brands on this call, I'm just very, have been a big fan of all your brands for a while now, and it's just amazing to be able to experience it myself and just seeing the love. I feel very loved right now. But I think I'll mention one more thing. I had made the decision to have a planned C-section anyway. With the placenta previa, I actually have to have it. And it's, my due date moved up by about like a month, which is, a lot. So I'm giving birth pretty soon. So, I just, I'm anxiously, awaiting. It's going to be a huge life change. And, but I'm definitely ready for it. I'm an older mom. I'm in my late 30s. I'm an older first-time mom. So, but I honestly, I feel pretty good. So I haven't had any of the really bad experiences. But I think just hearing from all the amazing women and moms who've gone before me has been super helpful.
Jess, I guess you also have a younger one for this group of people on this call. So what was your feeding journey, if we can answer some questions for Sophia, like in the early days, and especially as you transitioned back to work? I mean, it's amazing that you got to work from home every day.
Huge privilege. This is, it shouldn't be, but perhaps this is slightly controversial. I was one of those people that I absolutely could breastfeed. I chose not to. It didn't feel right for me. It took me away from work, absolutely, in a way that stressed me out more and made what should be a bonding experience feel like we're up against the clock. Come on, and I quickly realized, like, this isn't what it's supposed to be. It's just not, and it's not benefiting anyone if I'm so stressed doing this. I'm a believer in like energy, and it didn't feel right. So I formula fed from very early on.
Yeah, I love that you said that, and we need to normalize everybody's feeding journey, and we have the luxury to choose. So you should be able to I mean, not everybody has the luxury to choose,
Right.
but if you do, why not have that choice and be able to make it for what works best for you?
Yeah.
And you were early in hatch days and feeding a baby. What was your feeding journey like in the beginning?
I was very fortunate. It just it was very easy for me. But Jess, I really applaud that because motherhood, it's what feels good to you, right?
Right.
And I remember my friends were having natural births, and I was incredibly proud of them and thought it was very courageous and awesome. And I still believe that it's fantastic. I chose to have a hospital birth, and I felt slightly, I wouldn't say ashamed, but I was a little, I felt like there was this hierarchy of what I feel is close to the baby and, the motherhood experience if I were to, be assisted by drugs and a doctor. And I just remember feeling or fighting feelings of shame or comparisons. And I think it's beautiful that things have evolved a little bit. And hopefully, we all now have the circle of each other and trust and conversation that wasn't around as openly, 10 years ago, that allows us to all feel like what's best for us is normal, because it is all normal.
Yeah.
Some of us have the luxuries of greater choices, and some of us aren't as fortunate, and we're still going to be okay, and the baby's going to be okay. And I think having faith that if you zag a little bit from any playbook, it's your own playbook, and the baby's going to be all right. It's
Yeah.
about love. It's really about love, and hopefully a solid witnessed relationship ahead of them that's providing them the support that they need. That's what it's about.
I think about our parents' generation, like, we're so careful now during pregnancy and what we eat and drink and everything. And I think about our parents, and look at all of us. I think it looked very different
Exactly.
then.
We all came out all right.
And even their
Exactly.
parents,
Oh
that
my
was
God, their parents. I think my
Right.
grandmother was like smoking cigarettes. My mom's a psychologist. She's doing,
Yeah.
I mean, don't smoke cigarettes, pregnant, but
I'm with
it kind
you.
of leads us into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the unspoken physical changes. And for me, and Elaine, I'm sure this comes up all of the time at ULA, but I had oversupply, which means like you produce a lot of milk, and everything I had heard was like people struggling to produce anything at all, and that was for me shocking. Like my boobs were like basketballs and just like so much milk, and that was shocking to me. So Sarah, I'm curious, like, what was shocking to you, and then I kind of want to hear from everyone. And Sophia, it's not to scare you but more to
No,
prepare
this is
you.
so helpful to hear.
Well, I mean, I feel like I've had now the benefit of having three kids is you get to have every experience under the sun. Like, I didn't breastfeed my first daughter really at all, so I had lots of various issues. My second two kids, I breastfed forever. And so after the third kid, I would say my body was pretty wrecked. Like it really, it the first one, I kind of got everything back. The second one, it was starting to really bounce back by the third, and like all those, 4 cumulative years of straight breastfeeding really does a number to you. But there's plastic surgery. It's expensive, but it's great.
All
And
for it.
I feel great now. I actually
Okay, good.
I got both a breast lift and a reduction. I had, wanted to do that my whole life. And finally, after having babies, I was able to get that done. And like, I feel better in my body than I ever felt. So I think
Good.
that's even when there are physical changes, there are remedies, and you can do that. And you know what? You can have a better body than you had. You can fix all these problems that you've been waiting to fix. And so that's kind of the other side of things, is once you're done with babies, you get to do all these things to yourself that you might have been waiting to do for a while.
I like am craving, I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but I've been like craving the Botox needle. I like
Oh,
can't
same.
wait.
I cannot wait. People ask me what am I going to eat after? I'm like, no, I'm going like very soon
Botox.
after Botox.
Yes. Elaine, I guess talk to us. What's something about your physical recovery that totally caught you off guard?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at ULA, we always say pregnancy is not just a clinical thing. It's really something that affects your mind, body, soul. And I actually, when I'm thinking about mind, body, soul, it's not like mind, body, soul. Like it's all kind of one big diagram. And it's incredible. I mean, the human body is insane during pregnancy. Like what we are able to accomplish is mind blowing. But really, like, there's no reason to kind of dissect them. I mean, I'll give an example. I definitely had postpartum anxiety that was associated with weaning. That was something I didn't have it with my first, and I had a horrible case of it with my second. And that's kind of like two parts of that Venn diagram. And just kind of, there were a lot of challenges, especially as kind of your time slips away as a mother. It happens with one, and then it becomes even more intense with a second. I think from a body perspective, I think it's just giving yourself some self-love, recognizing there is absolutely no pressure to bounce back. I mean, that feels to me extremely archaic, and I'm glad to see that there's been just some shifts in the way that we're talking to mothers about what their bodies should look like postpartum. And want to continue that. It's about, Sarah, as you were saying, it's about feeling great, and that could look in a wide variety of ways. It doesn't just have to mean like you're exercising every day. It's like what makes you feel better, and kind of hits those three buckets.
Yeah, I love that. Can we do like if you're comfortable, a raise of hands? Did anyone on this call experience postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety? I was depression. Zoom is okay. So Elaine, you were postpartum anxiety. Jess, what were you?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Sarah?
I had postpartum depression pretty severely after my first, and the other two I felt totally fine and normal.
That is
So
music to my ears.
I mean, I'd done all these things to prepare and be ready, and then I was like amazing with the second two. So I think it can also really vary, even just baby to baby.
Yeah, Arian, I think your hand went up, but I don't want to speak for you.
No,
Oh, good.
I peed in my pants constantly.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Still doing
constipated
it.
constantly.
Yeah.
So
Constipated
it's pretty rough
constantly.
out here.
Oh yeah. Elaine
Yeah.
someone at ULA can prescribe you something for that.
Yeah, pelvic floor. Although I've been doing it, and I'm still peeing when I sneeze. So
I don't know if anyone on this call is struggling, but what I will say from personal experience, and I am by no means an expert, is that you don't have to. So if you are showing signs of depression or anxiety, or if you don't feel like yourself, that's a sign enough to speak to someone. I went on Zoloft 5 months postpartum with my son, and in hindsight, I wish I went on it pregnant. I was showing signs of depression, like probably 6, 7 months pregnant, and just thought that was quote unquote normal. And now with the support of ULA and, you know, the midwives and the OBs that I've spoken to, I'm not going off Zoloft and I'm feeling so much better this pregnancy. So
Amazing.
that's just my
It
2
spe- it speaks to a lot of, I think there's a lot of false binaries with parenthood and pregnancy, but a feeling like, oh, you can't be on Zoloft while you're pregnant. That's a postpartum thing. Or, you know, just as you were just talked about, like there's different spectrums of eating too. Like I'll give an example. I was combo feeding. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't know that I could formula feed and breastfeed, and then I ended up breastfeeding less than I wanted to. That's okay. And so I think, you know, something that we're personally trying to change is how we talk about those false binaries so that there aren't these connection points between remedies that help make you feel like a whole person and a better mother. And that's not necessarily, you know, they're not in contrast to different journeys in your pregnancy.
Yeah, I'm curious. It sounds like the postpartum, like you were saying, anxiety or depression, Lily, you were saying it could even be sooner than, you know,
Yeah.
oh, like pre-birth or before birth. Because and I think I've read a lot about it, and I think there's much more discussion about it, luckily, because I think it was probably stigmatized and there was a lot of shame around it. But I'm as prepared as I can be. I think it will impact all of us, but it's just in you know, in different ways. What was it, if someone feels comfortable saying, what was it, Lily, you were saying, like you kind of don't feel like yourself, or is it
Yeah.
related to the baby, or is it just kind of related to maybe a loss of identity, or like, yeah, just curious on how does it
Great.
manifest itself?
That's a really good question. And I have 2 answers. And the first is my mom's a psychologist. I had a psychologist. My husband is really supportive. And even with all of those tools in my toolbox, it was hard for me to acknowledge or even understand what I was feeling. So I would say while I was pregnant, it was extreme fixation and like dark thoughts, mostly around my company, but it was like that it wasn't necessarily something that would have been a quote unquote big deal. Like I would have figured it out and dealt with it. It was an obstacle, but the way the obstacles presented themselves to me or how I dealt with them and handled them, it felt like the biggest deal in the world. And that was just like never my personality. And it sent me into this spiral. And then postpartum, I would have not like harmful thoughts to hurt my baby or myself, but I remember a moment and I could like cry driving home from work. I was probably like 2 weeks postpartum and I was like, oh, if that car hit me and like I died, it like wouldn't be the end of the world. And I was like, that's probably not the way that I should be feeling with a newborn at home. And yeah, that was it for me. And so spiraling and then not pleasant thoughts were how it transpired for me, but I don't know about anyone else.
Someone gave me an analogy. It's like, you know, you can look at a faucet. Sometimes people after postpartum, they feel like the faucet is turning on. They're like, oh my gosh, I do not feel like myself. That is typically a rare number of people that really kind of are able to identify right away that I have postpartum or PPA or PPD. And then oftentimes it's just kind of you're slowly turning on the faucet and it just gets more and more complicated. And it's just a recognition that, you know, the statistic is after you give birth, it's as if you were eating 100 birth control pills. Think about the amount of hormones that are going through your body. That's the change that you go through. And so just, again, recognize it, prepare for yourself mentally before you're in the moment, and know that, you know, faucet might be turning on and off, and maybe you need some, you know, additional assistance to really kind of manage some of those emotions and thoughts.
And did anyone go to the pediatrician those first few weeks after and they give you that like sheet of paper where you're supposed to circle if like a smiley face, a medium face, or like a sad face, as if that's supposed to explain how you're feeling? Like, Sophia, I think what you're doing is so important, which is getting smart on what it all means beforehand, because you know yourself best. Yeah. Jess, any tips or tools for how you dealt with your anxiety postpartum? Still learning?
Yes, no, yeah, I'm still. It was worst with my first because I wasn't really identifying it. That was the problem. It wasn't so extreme, and I was so exhausted that I was like, am I just exhausted and like every little thing is getting to me, or is this something else? And I just kind of put it in the camp of exhaustion, because I am someone who, when I don't get enough sleep, strap in. It's going to be, it's going to be interesting. So that's really what I thought was occurring. And it wasn't kind of until after the fact that I was like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't just being really tired. That was something else for sure.
I think one of the tough things with mental health is your brain can really trick you, and you aren't even able to identify that you might be in a mental health crisis. So it is important to have trusted people around you, your OB, like use them when you go in for that 8-week postpartum appointment, like tell them really what is happening, and try to explain to other people so that you can have kind of a sanity check, because your own brain may not be really even working properly when you're in a crisis like that.
You just reminded me, I remember being like, my best friend had a baby 2 weeks before me. We were all hanging out once my son was around, and everyone was like laughing at something. And I remember being like, okay, like laugh, like cue, like everyone else is laughing. And I just remember having to tell myself to laugh in that moment. And it was just dark, and you don't have to feel dark. There are so many tools that are available now. So we got your back, Sophia.
Thank you
We
for
did.
sharing. I really appreciate it.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Thank you.
To switch gears a little, and I want to be conscious of time, but this is my reality right now with a 3.5-year-old. It's the toddler chaos and the public meltdowns. And I kind of actually want to not make stereotypes here, but I am curious. Like, I've been fundraising lately, and there have been times when my son has popped into the conversation, and I'm curious if that happens with any of you guys on your calls, maybe with investors or not, but do you notice a difference in how people handle those interruptions in today's world? Because I have found that it is not always welcomed with open arms. So I'm curious how you handle toddler interruptions at work. Anyone?
I think with my team, it's about letting it happen and laughing about it and making sure you're creating a culture. It's unfortunate I can't say the same as the investor community. I mean, you can only control the culture within your own team. And it's harder to control the culture externally. But yeah, it's always, there are so many important meetings I've had where someone has popped in to say something ridiculous. And you just have to laugh because it goes back to the concept of perfection is the enemy of good. You're never going to have that perfect meeting, or you may not have that perfect meeting with toddlers or young children.
Or maybe the interruption makes it perfect.
Yes, exactly. But
I mean, yeah, we're all in the same category here, so it's kind of on brand, right?
Right.
So you just flip the switch a little bit and use it as a prop in a way.
I was just
Remember
on
that BBC video where the two kids came into his,
yes,
Yeah.
they
that was the
became
best.
world famous? I think they interviewed
Amazing.
them recently.
Yeah,
That was amazing.
that did just happen actually with a male investor. His son like waddled in a diaper, and I was like, it's very on brand. But actually, this is a question because Ariane, what you said, we're kind of all in the same space. We're all women. Do we feel like the stereotypes are real that being a female founder, a female leader, being in the parenting space, makes what we're doing harder? And I think the answer for me is like 100%. I personally have realized that the stereotypes are real. I'm curious what you all think, and no order, whoever has
Yeah,
something to
I mean, I'll take a lead because I think I've probably been at this a little bit longer than most of you, but
please.
I've seen this beautiful zeitgeist like really rise where when I started Hatch, the publications wouldn't cover maternity because it was still taboo to like show your belly or tell your boss that you were pregnant in fear of being fired. And then all of a sudden, fortunately, and I credit Hatch on being one of the like beginning factors of this movement of having the conversation surface that it's strength in women, it's strength in pregnancy, and that we should show and be proud of the fact that we are superhuman and carrying like new babies and our, new life in our inside of us. And the tides changed and pregnancy started to become, and motherhood became, and remember, there was a whole movement of female empowerment, and we were the topic of conversation. I mean, we got pop-ups in Nordstrom because motherhood was like the key conversation of the time. It was the zeitgeist. It was the trend. And then COVID happened, and I think a lot of us were strapped with the babies and the teams and at home, and we were faced with a lot of pressure. And then a lot of other social movements happened. And unfortunately, regardless of your political view, I just feel like we're digressing right now, and it is much harder. And motherhood and parenthood is it's shifting and I think unfortunately moving a little bit backwards, and it's scary. And that's truly like my honest opinion.
I couldn't have said it better. I completely agree. But I do think Hatch had a big role in making it sexy there for a while.
For a while, yeah. Look, it still is. And look, what we have now that we didn't have then is this conversation where we're all talking about the real stuff that's happening to us. We're talking about the stuff we're doing about it to make ourselves feel better. And we have a community of women who are honest, and we're not alone as much anymore. And that's a huge stride. That, I mean, how grateful are we for this conversation and the fact that we're able to share these horror stories that would have alternatively been, something that we'd keep secret and feel very lonely about. So there's been true progress made there. And I hope women and a lot of people on this call, and pregnancy has become less taboo and more comforting.
Absolutely. And if I could say, being born and raised in Finland, we're well known for, incredible support for new families and parents generally. My mom talks about that there's more men pushing the strollers on the streets than women these days. But I always also say it's, you can take a system that works for 5.5 million people to, to a country with 330 million people. Like there needs to be, larger societal changes here. But I definitely agree with you, Ariane, that there's been, it doesn't feel very good right now. Like even bringing a child into this world feels scary, But to your point, these types of groups. So kudos, Lily, for building Auggie. And I don't think these types of groups really existed, 20 years ago. So I think us having this conversation and I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and she's in her early 50s, and she's just like, women that are, 30, 40, 50, 60 plus, there's just, I think it's happening slowly. It's this groundswell that's kind of building, that we can celebrate women in their later stages in their life, and motherhood being a huge part of it.
I think, just to add, like I've definitely seen, that now DEI is almost like a bad word, and you can't, and motherhood and parenthood was sort of grouped under DEI. So some of those initiatives that elevated mothers and women have, gone to the wayside, like DEI. But one positive thing is, I think as part of, one of the things that got grouped under DEI was sort of like this extra scrutiny on female founders being like extremely inclusive, to the point where, I've been doing Winnie for over 9 years, and like there was a real point where I was worried that, like, was our parental leave, which I think is very generous for a startup of our size, was it enough? And were we going to be, the next company that got taken down because we weren't extra inclusive as a female founder running a parent-centric business? And I think that is at least not something that keeps me up at night anymore. So there's like a little bit of a silver lining, in that I think we're slightly less of a target as, like, quote, female founders not being super inclusive. But then we've lost all the, like, kind of good things that have come with, the DEI movement, which there were many, and many of them benefited female founders.
I mean, I think there was a headline this week on how female founders are on an up, the funding for female founders has gone down dramatically, which is just not.
And there's also there's a number of venture funds that really focused on female founders and underrepresented founders that, there was actually legal action against some of those funds that they weren't allowed to do that and deploy their capital that way. And so now you'll see that a lot of these funds that were like, we only invest in female founders, are like changing their line. And that is obviously not great for female and underrepresented founders who, already have trouble accessing capital, this kind of teeny bucket that was sort of reserved for us is gone now too.
Yeah, I think it
You
was
know, I
like
think
2% and it's like 1.6 now or something along those lines. And it's
feel
also
that.
impacting like new funds, which is
Yeah.
like, there were new funds that were focused on this. And yeah, so it's definitely, and it's interesting because I think the funding landscape is not going to get better. I think discretionary income or just disposable income, there's just less of it generally. I think the LPs are,
Yep.
they have their own challenges with VC as asset class being pretty risky. And I know, Lily, you're fundraising, so I hope it's going well for you, because there are still people, honestly, funds and people, but I think more and more what I hear is people are focused on angel investors and family offices who really believe in these categories and believe it's still worth it. And consumer drives, X percentage of spending still. Like, we can't all be AI adjacent or AI companies. Consumer is, I believe, still the future, but I think it's probably an ebb and flow.
Isn't it ironic? Like AI, I think, is an absolute contradiction to motherhood.
And yes, and all the things that go
Elaborate
into
on that
motherhood.
area,
We
and
need
I'm
more
curious.
humans.
Artificial
Yeah.
intelligence versus like instinctive feeling
Right.
of motherhood, right?
Intuition.
It's just
Yeah.
by nature the opposite definition. I'm sure someone will figure out how to tie the two together, but it is funny.
Yeah,
I think-
we're baby and toddler food, and I was like, there's no way I can make this AI. We are who we are. I was just
You are
joking.
who you
I was
are.
thinking about it.
AI diapers, Jess, in our
Yeah,
future.
exactly.
So this
I-
conversation has, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think the silver lining with kind of all of this and even the funding environment is that the connection points between female founders have grown even deeper. I feel, at least personally, that what can I do to help others raise capital? How can I ensure that they don't, fall in the same traps that maybe I have before? How do they find the right VCs and the right funders? And and that actually echoes kind of just the motherhood community. I think, previously maybe mother communities were seen as catty. Like, that's the last thing that I have found, at least for my own community, of really mothers supporting mothers, and female founders supporting female founders. And so my advice to everyone is just lean into both, because we're here to support.
The female founders that have been supportive are the people over the last year that I've really been in Auggie. Female founders have been like everything. I couldn't have done it without some of my friends who have been there for the support. So I'm so glad we're all here together. The question I want to end on came from the chat, and maybe we could pick one word, or just for the sake of time, just do a short answer, each of us. But how did your values change after motherhood? Did it change the direction of the business or your ambitions? My quick answer was everything that I did became much more intentional with how I spent my time, both at work and then at home. So that's my answer. Elaine, do you want to go next? Are you thinking?
It's hard to follow because I feel like I'm going to copy you. I mean, I think
Well, then maybe that's
because
just it.
intentionality. I mean, I think my whole thing with motherhood is what I get wrapped up about is time. There's a pie chart of time. I also need a lot of sleep, and so how do I make it all happen? And so forgive me for giving the same answer as you, but really being intentional about how you spend that time and being focused in those key areas.
Yeah. Or maybe that's just it.
Love it.
Okay. Well, ladies, thank you so much for the paths that you're forging ahead and for the time you took to be on this call. And I hope we get to do it again soon. You're all an inspiration to me. So thanks so much.
Thanks, gang.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Best of
Thanks so
luck,
much.
everyone.
Too.
Bye. Thank you.